What if I was reborn as Sokka, the last energy bender? Like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, and let's get straight in it. The Water Tribe Scientist, A New Path. The first thing Dr. Marcus Chen, no, Sokka, noticed was the cold. Not the sterile, controlled environment of his laboratory, but the biting, natural cold of the South Pole. His last memory had been of falling asleep at his desk after another 18-hour research session on quantum consciousness transfer. Now he was staring up at a star-filled sky, his breath misting in the frigid air. Sokka, get up. The voice was familiar, achingly so. He turned his head to see Katara rushing toward him, her dark hair whipping in the wind. Behind her, Gran hobbled forward with concern etched on her weathered face. This is impossible, he thought, but the evidence was undeniable. He was in Sokka's body, in the Avatar world, and if his memory served correctly, which it always did, they were about to discover the Avatar frozen in an iceberg. I'm fine, he said, testing his voice. It came out exactly as Sokka's should, complete with the slight crack that indicated the character's youth. Internally, he marveled at the situation. A consciousness transfer into a fictional universe. The implications were staggering, but there was no time for scientific analysis now. Katara helped him to his feet, and he couldn't help but notice how her figure had developed even at her young age. The animated series hadn't done justice to the reality of these characters as actual people. Her concern was genuine, her touch warm despite the cold, and when she looked at him with those bright blue eyes, he felt something stir that was distinctly unscientific. You hit your head when you fell, she explained. I was worried you might have. Katara. His voice was steady now, carrying an authority that surprised even him. I'm perfectly fine. Better than fine, actually. I feel different, clearer. And he did. Along with Sokka's memories and instincts came something else, a strange awareness, as if he could sense the very energy that flowed through all living things. It was faint now, barely noticeable, but it was there. Gran studied his face with the intensity of someone who had lived through nearly a century of surprises. You do look different, Sokka. There's something in your eyes. Before he could respond, a tremendous cracking sound echoed across the ice. In the distance, a pillar of light shot skyward, and he knew immediately what it meant. Aang was free. What was that? Katara gasped. Sokka, he had to think of himself as Sokka now, grinned with the kind of confidence that would have seemed impossible moments before. That, my dear sister, is the beginning of everything. Chapter 2, The Avatar's Return. They found Aang exactly where Sokka knew they would, trapped in a sphere of ice with a massive flying bison. But knowing what would happen and experiencing it were entirely different things. When the iceberg cracked open and the Avatar emerged, the raw power that washed over them was overwhelming. Aang looked exactly as he did in the series, but again, the reality was more intense. His tattoos glowed with an inner light that seemed to pulse with life itself, and when his eyes opened, Sokka felt that strange energy sense react violently. Energy bending, he realized with a start. That's what this is. I need to ask you something, Aang said after the initial introductions, his voice carrying the weight of 100 years of sleep. Will you help me? Sokka stepped forward before Katara could answer. We'll help you, Aang. But first, let me ask you something, do you ever feel like there are people around who might have potential? People who could be more than they appear to be? Aang tilted his head, confused. What do you mean? I mean, Sokka said with a grin that was becoming his trademark, that we're going to need all the allies we can get. And sometimes the best allies are the ones hiding in plain sight. You could help me figure out who those people are. Katara frowned. Sokka, what are you talking about? We need to get Aang to the Northern Water Tribe to find him a waterbending master. Oh, we'll do that, Sokka assured her. But along the way, we're going to do so much more. He looked directly at Aang. Trust me on this one, buddy. I've got plans that are going to change everything. As they prepared to leave on Appa, and Sokka had to admit that riding a flying bison was even more incredible than it looked, he found himself studying Katara more closely. She was beautiful, no question, but there was also a strength to her that the series had only hinted at. When she moved, there was a fluidity that spoke of untapped potential, and when she waterbent, he could actually sense the energy flowing through her. You're staring, she said without looking at him. Just thinking, he replied smoothly. You're more powerful than you know, Katara. A lot more powerful. She blushed slightly, which only enhanced her natural beauty. I'm not that good at waterbending yet. I'm not talking about just waterbending. He leaned closer, lowering his voice so only she could hear. There's something special about you. Something that goes beyond just bending. I can sense it. Sense it. She turned to face him fully now, her eyes wide with curiosity. What do you mean? Before he could answer, Aang called out from Appa's head. There's a Fire Navy ship below us. Sokka looked down and saw the ship exactly where he knew it would be. Prince Zuko, in all his scarred, angry glory, was undoubtedly aboard. But Sokka wasn't thinking about the immediate threat. He was thinking about the long game, about all the people he would meet, all the opportunities that lay ahead. Aang, he called out, when we get out of this mess, I want to talk to you about something important. About finding people who might surprise us. People who might be worth getting to know better. What kind of people? Aang asked, steering Appa away from the ship. Sokka's grin turned predatory. All kinds, buddy. All kinds. Chapter 3, First Encounters. Their first stop was Kyoshi Island, and Sokka's heart raced with anticipation. Not just because he would meet Suki, though that was definitely part of it, but because this would be his first real test of his abilities and knowledge. The Kyoshi warriors captured them exactly as he remembered, but this time he was ready. When they were brought before Suki, Sokka took a moment to really look at her. The series had shown her as strong and capable, but seeing her in person was something else entirely. She moved with the grace of a master warrior, her figure perfectly balanced between strength and femininity. The face paint couldn't hide the intelligence in her eyes or the way she carried herself with absolute confidence. I've never seen such sloppy earthbending, she taunted, just as she had in the series. But instead of getting defensive, Sokka laughed. You're absolutely right. I'm terrible at earthbending, probably because I'm not an earthbender. Suki blinked, clearly not expecting that response. Then why? Because I wanted to meet you, he said simply. I've heard stories about the Kyoshi warriors. About their leader, specifically. Someone described as the most skilled fighter in the Earth Kingdom who isn't a bender. Flattery won't. It's not flattery if it's true. Sokka's voice carried a confidence that made even the other warriors shift uncomfortably. You're everything I heard you were and more. The question is, are you interested in being part of something bigger? Suki's eyes narrowed. What do you mean? I mean the world is about to change in ways you can't imagine. The Avatar has returned, and the Fire Nation is going to pull out all the stops to capture him. When that happens, places like Kyoshi Island are going to be in the crosshairs. You can stay here and defend your home when they come, or you can come with us and help us end this war once and for all. We don't get involved in the war, Suki said firmly. That's our way. Sokka stepped closer, and he could sense something interesting about her energy signature. There was potential there, something that went beyond just martial arts training. What if I told you that your way of fighting, combined with certain abilities you might not even know you have, could save thousands of lives? What abilities? The question came from behind the face paint, but he could hear the curiosity. Let me show you something, Sokka said. He closed his eyes and reached out with that strange new sense. Energy flowed through everything, but in some people, it flowed differently. In Suki, it flowed like controlled lightning, precise and powerful. You've always been faster than you should be, haven't you? Stronger. Your reflexes are beyond what training alone should provide. Suki's stance shifted slightly. How could you know that? Because I can sense it. And if you let me, I can help you understand it. He opened his eyes and met her gaze directly. Trust me, Suki. I know that's asking a lot, but I promise you won't regret it. Meanwhile, Aang was getting his own lesson in humility from the other warriors, but Sokka could see the young Avatar watching their conversation with interest. Good. He would need Aang's help with what he had planned. That evening, after they had proven themselves and been welcomed as guests, Sokka found himself alone with Suki by the shore. She had removed her face paint, revealing features that were even more striking than he had imagined. You're different from other boys I've met, she said, sitting beside him on a fallen log. Good different or bad different? He asked with a grin. I'm not sure yet. She studied his profile in the moonlight. There's something about you that seems older, more experienced than you should be. That was perceptive, too perceptive. Maybe I've just seen more than most people my age. Maybe. She was quiet for a moment. This ability you mentioned, the one you say I have, what is it exactly? Sokka turned to face her fully. It's hard to explain. It's like, you know how benders manipulate the elements. Well, there's something deeper than that. Something that connects all living things. Most people can't sense it, let alone use it, but some people, special people, have a natural connection to it. And you think I'm one of these special people? I know you are. He reached out and gently touched her hand. I can teach you, if you want to learn. The contact sent a jolt through both of them. Suki's eyes widened, and for a moment, Sokka could swear he saw energy dancing between their joined hands. What was that? She whispered. That, Sokka said with satisfaction, was just the beginning. Chapter 4, The Energy Within. Teaching Suki the basics of energy sensitivity was easier than Sokka had expected. She was a natural, able to sense the flow of life force within minutes of their first lesson. They practiced in secret while Aang trained with the other Kyoshi warriors and Katara worked on her waterbending. I can feel it, Suki said on their third day on the island. They were sitting in meditation pose facing each other, her hands resting palm up on her knees. It's like there's a current running through everything. Exactly, Sokka encouraged. Now try to direct it. Just a little. Don't force it, just guide it. Suki's brow furrowed in concentration. Slowly, almost imperceptibly, the air between them began to shimmer. Not with heat, but with something else entirely. Energy made visible. Incredible, Sokka breathed. You're a natural at this. What exactly am I doing? She asked, not breaking her concentration. You're manipulating the fundamental force that connects all life. Benders work with the physical elements, but this goes deeper. This is the energy that makes bending possible in the first place. Can you do more than just sense it? Sokka grinned. Watch this. He extended his hand toward a nearby rock. Instead of touching it physically, he reached out with his energy sense, feeling the vibrations within the stone itself. Then, very carefully, he began to alter those vibrations. The rock began to glow with a soft, warm light. Suki gasped. How? Everything is energy at its core, Sokka explained. Matter, light, even thoughts and emotions. If you can sense energy, you can eventually learn to manipulate it in ways that go far beyond traditional bending. Is this how you knew I had potential? Partly. He let the rock's glow fade. But also because I could sense something special about your life force. It's stronger than most people's, more dynamic. Suki was quiet for a long moment. Sokka, where did you learn this? This isn't something they teach in the Water Tribe, is it? That was a dangerous question. Let's just say I've had some unique experiences. The important thing is that you're learning. She studied his face intently. There's something you're not telling me. There are lots of things I'm not telling you, he admitted. But not because I don't trust you. Because some knowledge is dangerous if it comes too early. Before Suki could press further, Aang came running toward them, his face flushed with excitement. Sokka, you have to see this. The Kyoshi warriors taught me this amazing move, and I think I figured out how to combine it with airbending. Perfect timing. Show me, Sokka said, getting to his feet. Aang demonstrated a complex martial arts form that incorporated his natural airbending in ways that were definitely not traditional air nomad technique. It was impressive, but what caught Sokka's attention was something else entirely. Aang, he said carefully, while you were doing that, did you notice anything different about any of the warriors? Different how? I mean, did any of them seem to have abilities that went beyond just martial arts? Aang tilted his head thoughtfully. Well, there was one girl, Lin, I think her name was. When she was sparring, it almost looked like she could predict where her opponent was going to strike before they moved. Sokka's eyes lit up. Really? Where is she now? Over by the training grounds. Why? Because, my friend, I think we've found another person with potential. Sokka clapped Aang on the shoulder. Want to help me test a theory? What kind of theory? The kind that might help us find allies in places we never expected. As they walked toward the training grounds, Suki fell into step beside them. You're collecting people, she said quietly. People with these abilities. I'm not collecting them, Sokka corrected. I'm finding them. There's a difference. And what exactly are you planning to do with all these people you're finding? Sokka's smile was mysterious. Change the world, Suki. Change the world. Chapter 5, Hidden Talents. Lin turned out to be exactly what Sokka had hoped for, a young woman with latent energy sensitivity that manifested as precognitive flashes during combat. She was also, he noted with scientific appreciation, quite attractive in her own right. Auburn hair, green eyes, and a figure that the warrior's outfit did little to conceal. I don't understand what you're asking me to do, she said after Sokka had explained the basics of energy awareness. Just close your eyes and tell me what you feel when I move my hand, he instructed. They were in a secluded part of the training ground, with Aang and Suki watching intently. Lin closed her eyes, and Sokka slowly raised his hand toward her face without touching her. Her brow furrowed in concentration. I can feel heat. No, not heat. Something else. Like a tingling sensation. Good. Now, without opening your eyes, tell me which direction my hand is moving. Sokka moved his hand in a slow circle around her head. Lin's face followed the movement perfectly, her head turning to track his hand's position. Left. Now up. Now right, she murmured. Incredible, Aang whispered. She can sense your energy. Now, Sokka said, his voice taking on a more intense tone, I want you to try something else. I'm going to attack you, not really attack, just move as if I'm attacking. Keep your eyes closed and try to feel what I'm going to do before I do it. I don't think. Trust me, Sokka said softly. You've been doing this your whole life in combat. You just never realized what it was. He moved slowly at first, telegraphing a punch toward her shoulder. Lin's hand came up automatically to block, even though her eyes were still closed. How did you know I was going to do that? Sokka asked. I could feel your intention somehow. Like your energy changed before you moved. Exactly. Sokka stepped back, his heart racing with excitement. Lin, what you're describing is the ability to read the energy patterns that precede physical action. It's an incredibly rare gift. Is it really that special? She asked, finally opening her eyes. Special enough that I'd like you to consider joining us, Sokka said directly. We're going to be traveling with the Avatar, and we could use someone with your abilities. Lin looked uncertain. I've never left Kyoshi Island. This is my home. I know, and I'm not asking you to abandon it forever. But think about what you could learn, what you could become. The war is coming whether we want it or not. Wouldn't you rather be part of ending it? Before Lin could answer, Suki stepped forward. He's right, she said quietly. I've been thinking about what you showed me, Sokka. About the energy sensitivity. If there are others like us out there. There are, Sokka assured her. Many others. And they're going to need guidance. Aang, who had been unusually quiet during this exchange, finally spoke up. Sokka, can I ask you something? How do you know so much about this energy stuff? I'm the Avatar, and I've never heard of anything like what you're describing. That was the question Sokka had been dreading. Aang, what I'm going to tell you might sound strange, but I need you to trust me. Sometimes people are born with knowledge they shouldn't have. Sometimes the universe prepares us for roles we don't understand until the moment comes. You're saying you were born knowing about energy bending. I'm saying that ever since you emerged from that iceberg, I've been different. Like your return awakened something in me that was always there but dormant. It wasn't entirely a lie. His consciousness transfer had coincided with Aang's awakening, and he did seem to have abilities that the original Sokka never possessed. That's actually not unheard of, Aang said thoughtfully. The air nomads taught that the Avatar's return would awaken spiritual gifts in others. It's one of the reasons the Avatar exists, to help guide people who develop these abilities. Perfect. Sokka could work with that explanation. So you'll help me find others? Sokka asked. Of course. It sounds like we're going to need all the help we can get. That evening, as they prepared to leave Kyoshi Island the next morning, Sokka found himself in the unique position of having convinced both Suki and Lin to join their group. Suki would leave the island in the hands of her second-in-command, while Lin would serve as their scout and early warning system. He was sitting by the fire, watching Katara practice her waterbending, when she came and sat beside him. "You've been different since we found Aang," she said without preamble. "Different how?" "Older. More confident. Like you know things you shouldn't know." She turned to face him. "And you've been looking at me differently too." Sokka's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "You know what I mean." Her voice was soft but direct. "I'm your sister, Sokka. I know when you're seeing me as more than just your sister." This was dangerous territory. "Katara. I'm not angry," she said quickly. "Just confused. We're not really siblings, are we? Not by blood." She was right, of course. They were adopted siblings, related by circumstance rather than genetics. But bringing that up now felt like crossing a line he wasn't sure he was ready to cross. "You're my family," he said carefully. "That's what matters." But family can mean different things to different people. She was looking at the fire now, her profile highlighted by the dancing flames. Especially when the world is ending and nothing is certain anymore. "Katara." He reached out and touched her hand gently. "What are you trying to say?" "I'm saying that I've noticed the way you look at me. And I'm saying that maybe, in a different world, in different circumstances." She trailed off, but the implication was clear. "And now?" Sokka asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "Now I don't know. Everything is changing so fast. You're changing. I'm changing. Maybe we should just see what happens." The moment stretched between them like a bridge neither was quite ready to cross. Finally, Katara squeezed his hand once and stood up. "Think about it," she said. "Think about what you really want, Sokka. Because I have a feeling we're going to have to make some difficult choices soon." As she walked away, Sokka stared into the fire and realized that his plans for collecting allies and mastering energy bending were about to become far more complicated than he had anticipated. Chapter 6, The Northern Air Temple. Their next major stop was the Northern Air Temple, and Sokka was practically vibrating with anticipation. Not only would they meet the Mechanist and his son Teo, but this would also be his first encounter with the kind of large-scale engineering that could serve his long-term plans. The temple itself was exactly as impressive as he remembered, but seeing it in person made him appreciate the Mechanist's genius in entirely new ways. The integration of technology with air nomad architecture was brilliant, and the gliders were far more sophisticated than the series had shown. "This is incredible," Aang said as they landed Appa in the temple courtyard. "They've completely transformed this place." "Not destroyed," Sokka corrected, studying the modifications with the engineer's eye. "Enhanced. This is what happens when someone thinks beyond traditional limitations." "You sound like you approve," Katara observed. "I more than approve. I'm inspired." Sokka was already formulating plans. The Mechanist's innovations could be adapted, improved, scaled up. With the right resources and the right team. "Sokka." Aang's voice broke into his thoughts. "You're doing that thing again where you look like you're planning something big." "Always," Sokka grinned. "Always planning something big." They were greeted by Teo, who was indeed everything Sokka had hoped for and more. The young man's disability hadn't slowed him down at all. If anything, it had made him more ingenious. His wheelchair was a marvel of engineering, and his knowledge of the temple's systems was encyclopedic. But what really caught Sokka's attention was the girl working alongside Teo in the workshop. She hadn't been in the series, but she was definitely there now, a young woman about their age with intelligent brown eyes and grease-stained fingers. "That's Kira," Teo explained when he noticed Sokka's interest. "She's been helping Dad with the more complex mechanical work." Kira looked up from the device she was working on and gave them a quick smile. "Sorry, I'm a bit busy right now. We're trying to get the new elevator system working before." She was cut off by the sound of grinding gears and a mechanical shriek from somewhere deep in the temple. "Before that happens again," she finished with a sigh. "Need some help?" Sokka asked, already moving toward the workshop. "You know about mechanical engineering?" Kira asked, raising an eyebrow. "I know a few things." Sokka examined the device she was working on, some kind of gear assembly that looked like it was designed to handle massive amounts of torque. This is for the elevator system. The primary drive mechanism. We can't get the gear ratios right. Too much torque and the whole system jams. Too little and it can't lift the weight. Sokka studied the design for a moment, then picked up a piece of chalk and began sketching modifications on a nearby slate. What if you used a compound planetary gear system instead of direct drive? You could get the torque multiplication you need without the mechanical stress. Kira's eyes widened as she looked at his sketches. That's brilliant. Where did you learn this? Here and there, Sokka said vaguely. The more important question is, are you interested in learning more? Because I have ideas that go way beyond just fixing elevators. Over the next few days, while Aang dealt with the Fire Nation attack and the moral complexity of the temple's war balloon production, Sokka threw himself into working with the Mechanist and his team. But he also made time to test his theories about energy sensitivity. Kira, as it turned out, had an unusual relationship with mechanical devices. She could sense when they were about to fail, almost like she could feel the stress patterns in the metal itself. I've always been good with machines, she explained as they worked late one evening in the workshop. But lately, it's been different. It's like I can feel what they need. Show me, Sokka said. Kira placed her hands on a complex mechanical assembly, part of the temple's new ventilation system. Her eyes closed, and Sokka could sense her energy extending into the device. There, she said, pointing to a specific gear. That bearing is going to fail within the next day or two. The stress patterns are all wrong. Sokka examined the gear closely. To his eyes, it looked fine, but when he extended his own energy sense, he could feel the tiny fractures forming in the metal. Fractures that would lead to catastrophic failure within hours, not days. Kira, he said seriously, what you just did goes far beyond normal mechanical intuition. You're actually sensing the energy patterns within the metal itself. Is that unusual? Unusual. It's revolutionary. With training, you could learn to not just sense those patterns but manipulate them. Strengthen weak points, optimize efficiency, even repair damage at the molecular level. Her eyes went wide. Is that really possible? With the right teacher and enough practice. Absolutely. That night, as the group prepared to leave the temple with both Teo and Kira joining their expanding party, Sokka found himself alone with the Mechanist. You're not what you appear to be, the older man said without preamble. What do you mean? Your knowledge of engineering is far beyond what any Water Tribe boy should possess. Your understanding of mechanical principles is at least as advanced as mine, possibly more so. The Mechanist studied Sokka's face carefully. And then there are the things you've been teaching my apprentices about, energy patterns, and molecular manipulation. Sokka chose his words carefully. Sometimes the world presents us with knowledge we need, when we need it. And sometimes brilliant young men have secrets they're not ready to share. The Mechanist smiled. I'm not asking you to reveal those secrets, Sokka. I'm asking if you're planning to use your knowledge to help people or hurt them. Help, Sokka said without hesitation. Everything I'm doing is aimed at ending this war and building a better world. Then you have my support. And my curiosity. I'd very much like to see what you're planning to build. Stick around, Sokka said with a grin. I have a feeling you're going to be amazed. Chapter 7, The Swamp. The swamp was not on Sokka's original itinerary, but when a storm forced them down into the mysterious wetlands, he realized it might be exactly where they needed to be. The swamp was a nexus of spiritual energy, and if his theories were correct, it would be the perfect place to advance his energy-bending training. This place feels alive, Suki said as they set up camp on the first night. That's because it is, Sokka replied, extending his energy sense outward. The entire swamp pulsed with interconnected life force, like a vast neural network made of vines and water. This whole ecosystem is connected at the energy level. It's like one massive organism. How can you tell? Lin asked. She had been practicing her precognitive abilities during their travels, and her skills were developing rapidly. Close your eyes and reach out with your energy sense, Sokka instructed. Don't try to focus on any one thing. Just feel the overall pattern. Lin closed her eyes, her face scrunching in concentration. After a moment, her eyes snapped open in amazement. It's like everything is talking to everything else. The trees, the water, even the insects. Exactly. And that means this is the perfect place to learn some advanced techniques. Over the next several days, as they searched for a way out of the swamp and dealt with the various challenges it presented, Sokka used the opportunity to push everyone's abilities to new levels. Katara discovered that she could sense the flow of water through the entire swamp system, effectively giving her a three-dimensional map of the wetlands. More importantly, she began to understand that her waterbending wasn't just about manipulating H2O, it was about working with the life force that water carried. I can feel the energy in the water, she told Sokka during one of their training sessions. It's like each drop carries a piece of every living thing it's touched. That's advanced waterbending theory, Sokka said, impressed despite himself. Most masters never learn to sense that level of connection. How do you know about advanced waterbending theory? She asked, giving him that look again. I've been having very educational dreams lately, he said, which was true enough. His consciousness seemed to have access to knowledge that went far beyond what he should have known. Aang, meanwhile, was having his own revelations about the interconnectedness of all life. The swamp visions that showed him people he would meet in the future were particularly interesting to Sokka, because they suggested that Aang's avatar state was beginning to access temporal information. You saw Toph? Sokka asked when Aang described his vision of a girl who waited and listened. You know who she is. I have a theory. And if I'm right, she's going to be very important to our mission. But the most significant development came when they encountered the swamp bender, and Sokka realized that the man's ability to control the swamp vines went far beyond traditional earthbending. You're not actually bending the plants, Sokka observed as Hu demonstrated his abilities. You're bending the life force that flows through them. Hu's eyes widened. You can see that. I can sense it. And I think I can do it too. Sokka extended his hand toward a cluster of vines, reaching out not with physical force but with his energy sense. Instead of trying to move the vines directly, he connected with the life force flowing through them and gently guided it. The vines responded immediately, curling around his hand like friendly snakes. Incredible, Hu breathed. I've never seen anyone pick that up so quickly. It took me decades to learn to sense the life flow. Maybe I had a good teacher, Sokka said diplomatically. Or maybe you're something special, Hu replied. The swamp doesn't reveal its secrets to just anyone. That evening, as they finally found their way to the edge of the swamp, Sokka called a group meeting. We need to talk about what we've learned here, he said, looking around at the expanded group. Aang, Katara, Toph, who they had indeed found, though that's a story for the next chapter. Suki, Lin, Teo, and Kira all sat in a circle around their campfire. The abilities we've been developing aren't just random talents, Sokka continued. They're all connected. They're all different aspects of the same fundamental force, the energy that connects all living things. So what does that mean for us? Toph asked. She had joined their group just 2 days earlier, and her earthbending abilities combined with Sokka's energy manipulation training were producing remarkable results. It means we're not just a group of friends traveling with the Avatar, Sokka said. We're the beginning of something new. A new kind of bending that goes beyond the traditional elements. A new kind of bending? Aang asked, his eyes wide with curiosity. Energy bending, Sokka said firmly. The ability to sense and manipulate the fundamental forces that make all other bending possible. And I think, with the right training and the right resources, we can use these abilities to not just end the war, but to build a better world. He paused, looking at each of them in turn. The question is, are you all willing to trust me with something that ambitious? The answers came quickly and unanimously. Yes, they were willing to trust him. Yes, they wanted to learn more. And yes, they were ready to change the world. Good, Sokka said with satisfaction. Because our next stop is going to test everything we've learned so far. Chapter 8, The Blind Bandit. Finding Toph had been easier than Sokka expected, largely because his energy sensing abilities allowed him to locate her unique earthbending signature from miles away. What he hadn't expected was how much more powerful she was in person than she had been in the series. You're the kid who's been asking around about me, she said when they finally met face to face in the underground earthbending arena. The one who can supposedly sense energy, or whatever. That's me, Sokka confirmed. And you're the girl who's been holding back about 90% of her actual abilities. Toph's stance shifted slightly. What's that supposed to mean? It means I can sense your real power level, Toph. And it's terrifying. In a good way, he added quickly. You're not just the greatest earthbender of your generation. You're potentially the greatest earthbender who's ever lived. Flattery isn't going to. It's not flattery. Sokka's voice carried absolute conviction. Watch this. He pressed his palm against the ground and extended his energy sense deep into the earth. Through the network of stone and soil, he could feel every vibration for miles around. But more than that, he could sense the potential energy locked within the earth itself. You feel that? He asked. Toph's eyes widened. How are you doing that? That's not earthbending. No, it's something deeper. Something that earthbending is built on top of. And you, Toph Beifong, have a natural connection to it that's stronger than anyone I've ever encountered. Show me, she demanded. Over the next several hours, Sokka worked with Toph to help her understand her connection to the Earth's energy patterns. What they discovered was revolutionary. Traditional earthbending worked by manipulating existing stone and soil. But Toph, with her seismic sense enhanced by energy awareness, could actually sense the molecular structure of Earth materials. And with practice, she could manipulate that structure directly. I can feel the individual grains of sand, she said in amazement as she held a handful of earth. I can sense how they're connected, how they want to move. Now try to change that connection, Sokka encouraged. Toph focused her energy, and slowly, the loose sand in her hand began to compress and crystallize. Within moments, she was holding a perfect sphere of polished stone. That's impossible, she breathed. That's just the beginning, Sokka grinned. Toph, what you just did was transmute sand into gemstone at the molecular level. With enough practice, you could restructure any earth material into any other earth material. Any material. Any material. Sand to steel, clay to diamond, rock to rare earth metals. Sokka's eyes gleamed with possibilities. Do you understand what this means? We could build anything, create any resource we need. Construct cities, vehicles, weapons, defenses, all from basic earth materials. Toph was quiet for a long moment, absorbing the implications. And you can teach others to do this. I can teach anyone with the right natural aptitude. And I can help identify who has that aptitude. Sokka gestured toward their group. Every person we've recruited so far has some form of energy sensitivity. Every one of them has the potential to develop abilities that go far beyond traditional bending. So what's the plan? Toph asked directly. You're obviously building towards something big. The plan, Sokka said, is to create a new nation. A place where people with these abilities can train and develop their skills without interference. A base of operations for ending this war and preventing future ones. A new nation. Aang had been listening from nearby, and his voice carried both excitement and concern. Sokka, that's a massive undertaking. All the best undertakings are massive, Sokka replied. And we have advantages that no one has ever had before. Toph can literally create the infrastructure we need from raw earth. Kira can design and build mechanical systems that integrate with energy manipulation. You can provide the spiritual guidance and political legitimacy. And I. He paused, considering how much to reveal. I can coordinate it all. Where would we build this nation? Katara asked. I have some ideas about that. But first, we need to recruit a few more key people. People who can help us with specific aspects of the project. What kind of people? Suki wanted to know. Sokka's smile was mysterious. The kind that everyone else has written off as enemies. That evening, as they prepared to leave jailing with Toph officially joining their group, Sokka found himself alone with Katara by a small stream outside the city. You're really serious about this nation-building idea, she said, not quite making it a question. Dead serious. This war isn't going to end with defeating the Fire Lord, Katara. There are too many underlying problems, too much accumulated hatred and mistrust. We need to demonstrate a better way of living. And you think people with energy-bending abilities are the key to that? I think people who can literally sense the connections between all living things might be less likely to see others as enemies, Sokka replied. It's hard to hate someone when you can feel their life force flowing alongside your own. Katara was quiet for a moment, trailing her fingers in the water. Sokka, can I ask you something personal? Always. These abilities you've been teaching us, they're changing us. I can feel it. I'm not the same person I was a few months ago. She looked up at him. Are you still the same person? It was a loaded question, and they both knew it. No, Sokka said honestly. I'm not, but I'm becoming who I was always meant to be. And who is that? Someone who can see the big picture. Someone who can bring people together instead of driving them apart. He paused. Someone who can love more than one person at the same time and not see it as a betrayal. Katara's breath caught. Sokka. I know it's complicated. I know it goes against everything we were taught about relationships and loyalty and proper behavior. He turned to face her fully. But the old rules were made for the old world. We're building a new world, Katara. Maybe it's time for new rules. What are you saying? I'm saying that I care about you. Deeply. But I also care about Suki, and Toph, and probably others we haven't met yet. And I think, in the right circumstances, there's room for all of those feelings to coexist. Katara stared at him for a long moment. You're talking about. I'm talking about a different way of thinking about love and relationships. One based on abundance instead of scarcity. One where caring for multiple people doesn't diminish the care you have for each individual. She struggled for words. That's not how people do things. People with energy-bending abilities do things differently in a lot of ways, Sokka pointed out gently. Why should relationships be any different? Before Katara could respond, Lin came running toward them. Sokka, you need to see this. Toph is doing something amazing with the metal fixtures in our camp. As they hurried back to the group, Katara caught Sokka's arm. We're not done talking about this, she said quietly. I hope not, he replied. What they found when they reached the camp was indeed amazing. Toph had not only sensed the metal components in their various tools and weapons, but she was actually manipulating them. Metal bending, just as Sokka had hoped. I can feel the earth impurities in the metal, she explained excitedly. It's like they're calling to me. And if I can bend the impurities. You can bend the whole metal object, Sokka finished. Toph, you've just invented an entirely new form of bending. Is it really that big a deal? It's revolutionary. With metal bending, we can work with existing technology instead of having to build everything from scratch. We can salvage Fire Nation equipment, repurpose Earth Kingdom machinery. Sokka's mind was racing with possibilities. This changes everything. And as he looked around at his growing group of energy-sensitive allies, he realized that everything was indeed changing. The question was whether he could manage all these changes without losing control of the situation entirely. Chapter 9, The Drill. The siege of Ba Sing Se provided Sokka with the perfect opportunity to test his group's abilities in a real combat situation. The massive Fire Nation drill was an engineering marvel, but it was also vulnerable to exactly the kind of coordinated energy manipulation he had been training his team to perform. The plan is simple, he explained as they crouched on a ridge overlooking the drill. We don't try to stop this thing through brute force. We use precision strikes against critical structural points. What kind of precision strikes? Aang asked. Toph, you're going to use your enhanced earthbending to destabilize the drill's foundation. But not just by moving earth, by actually altering the molecular structure of the rock beneath it. Make it brittle, Toph nodded, understanding immediately. Exactly. Kira, you and Teo are going to identify the key mechanical failure points. But instead of trying to break them physically, you're going to use your energy sensitivity to induce metal fatigue at the molecular level. Is that really possible? Kira asked. You've been practicing with small components. This is just scaling up. Sokka turned to the others. Suki, Lin, I want you two coordinating our approach routes. Use your precognitive abilities to map out the guard patterns and identify the optimal timing. What about me? Katara asked. You're going to do something that's never been attempted before, Sokka said with a grin. You're going to waterbend the lubricating fluids inside the drill's mechanical systems. Not just move them around, actually alter their molecular composition to make them corrosive. Can I do that? Only one way to find out. The assault on the drill was unlike anything the Fire Nation had ever encountered. Instead of a direct attack that they could counter with superior firepower, they faced a systematic breakdown of their technology that seemed to come from nowhere. Toph's enhanced earthbending created a series of precisely targeted sinkholes that threw the drill's weight distribution completely off balance. The massive machine began to list to one side, putting stress on components that weren't designed to handle it. Simultaneously, Kira and Teo worked their way through the drill's interior, placing their hands on critical mechanical assemblies and using their energy manipulation to accelerate wear patterns that should have taken months to develop naturally. "It's working," Kira reported through their communication system. "The main drive shaft is developing stress fractures. The cooling system is overheating because the circulation pumps are seizing up." Meanwhile, Katara had indeed managed to alter the molecular composition of the drill's lubricating fluids. What had been designed to reduce friction was now actively corroding every metal surface it touched. "This is incredible," she said as they retreated from the drill's interior. "I can actually feel the individual molecules and how they want to bond with other elements." "Advanced chemistry through energy manipulation," Sokka confirmed. "You're essentially doing alchemy." The drill's destruction was spectacular and complete. But more importantly, it demonstrated to everyone involved, including several Fire Nation observers who escaped to report back, that there were new kinds of bending being developed that went far beyond traditional elemental manipulation. "They're going to be watching for us now," Suki pointed out as they made their way toward Ba Sing Se. "Good," Sokka replied. "Let them watch. Let them try to figure out how we're doing what we're doing. By the time they understand it, we'll be 10 steps ahead of them." That night, as they camped outside the great city's walls, Sokka found himself surrounded by his growing group of allies. But his attention was drawn to a new arrival, a young woman who had been traveling with a group of refugees and had caught his energy-sensitive attention. Her name was Mei Lin, and she had the most unusual energy signature he had encountered yet. Where most people's life force flowed in relatively simple patterns, hers was complex, multi-layered, almost fractal in nature. "You're not just energy-sensitive," he told her after they had been introduced. "You're a natural energy conduit." "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means you can channel and amplify other people's energy abilities. You could make a weak earthbender into a strong one, or help someone develop energy sensitivity who doesn't naturally have it." "Is that useful?" "Useful." Sokka laughed. "Mei Lin, what you can do is the key to everything I've been planning. With your abilities, we don't have to limit ourselves to recruiting only people with natural energy sensitivity. We can train anyone. Anyone. Anyone with the right motivation and dedication. Which means," Sokka's eyes gleamed with possibility. "Which means we can build our new nation faster than I ever dreamed possible." As they prepared to enter Ba Sing Se the next day, Sokka reflected on how much his group had grown and changed. They weren't just a band of allies anymore, they were becoming something entirely new. A community of people united not by nationality or element, but by their shared connection to the fundamental forces of life itself. And if his plans worked out, they were about to meet someone who would take that community to an entirely new level. Chapter 10, The Underground. Ba Sing Se was everything Sokka had expected and more. The massive city was a maze of social strata and hidden agendas, but it was also a treasure trove of potential recruits. His energy senses were practically singing with the number of people who had latent abilities they weren't even aware of. "There are dozens of them," he told his inner circle as they settled into their assigned quarters in the middle ring. "Maybe hundreds. People with energy sensitivity, latent bending abilities, unusual connections to spiritual forces." "How can you tell?" Toph asked. "It's like seeing heat signatures, but for life force instead of temperature. Most people have a standard energy pattern, but some people," he gestured vaguely, "some people burn brighter." "So what's the plan?" Suki wanted to know. "We establish a base of operations. Quietly. We start identifying and recruiting people with potential. And we prepare for the inevitable confrontation with the Dai Li." "You think the Dai Li will be a problem?" Katara asked. "I know they will be. But I also think they might be an opportunity." That proved prophetic when they were arrested by the secret police just 3 days after arriving in the city. But instead of being taken to a standard holding facility, they were brought before Long Feng himself. You're the group that destroyed the Fire Nation drill, the Grand Secretariat said without preamble. The reports from our agents describe bending techniques that don't match any known forms. We're innovators, Sokka replied calmly. We adapt to meet new challenges. Indeed. Which is why I'm going to make you an offer. Long Feng stepped closer, his eyes calculating. Work for me. Help me maintain order in this city. In return, I'll provide you with resources and protection. And if we refuse, then you'll find Ba Sing Se to be a very unwelcoming place. Sokka pretended to consider the offer for a moment. What kind of resources are we talking about? Training facilities, access to the Earth Kingdom's archives, funding for whatever projects you're working on. Long Feng smiled coldly. I'm told you're building something new. Something that could change the nature of bending itself. You're well informed. It's my job to be well informed. So what's your answer? My answer, Sokka said carefully, is that we're willing to discuss a partnership. But not as subordinates, as equals. Long Feng's expression darkened. I don't negotiate with children. Then you don't understand what you're dealing with. Sokka's voice carried a quiet authority that made even the Dai Li agents shift uncomfortably. We're not just children with unusual bending abilities. We're the beginning of something entirely new. Something that's going to reshape this world whether you're part of it or not. He extended his hand toward one of the stone pillars supporting the chamber ceiling. Without touching it, he began to alter its molecular structure, causing it to glow with internal light. This is energy bending, he said as gasps echoed through the chamber. The ability to manipulate the fundamental forces that make all other bending possible. And everyone in my group can do it to some degree. The pillar's glow intensified, and hairline cracks of light began to spread across its surface. With enough training and the right resources, we could teach it to others. We could create an entire new category of bending that goes beyond the traditional elements. Sokka let the glow fade. The question is, do you want to be part of that revolution, or do you want to be left behind by it? Long Feng stared at the pillar, his political instincts clearly warring with his desire for control. Finally, he spoke. What do you need? A secure facility where we can train without interference. Access to people who might have the potential for energy sensitivity. And most importantly, freedom to recruit allies from any social level or national background. Even Fire Nation citizens. Especially Fire Nation citizens. This war isn't going to end through military victory alone. It's going to end when we demonstrate a better way of living. A way that transcends national boundaries and elemental divisions. Long Feng was quiet for a long moment. You're proposing to build a fifth nation. I'm proposing to build the first truly integrated nation. One where earthbenders and waterbenders and airbenders and firebenders can work together because they're all connected to the same underlying energy. And you think this is possible? I know it's possible, because I can sense the energy connections that already exist between all living things. The divisions we create are artificial. The connections are real. That night, after securing their agreement with Long Feng, on terms much more favorable than Sokka had dared hope, the group gathered in their new underground training facility. This is incredible, Aang said, looking around at the massive cavern complex that had been placed at their disposal. We could train hundreds of people here. Thousands, eventually, Sokka corrected. And we're going to need to. Because what we're really doing here isn't just developing new bending techniques. We're creating the foundation for a new civilization. That's a big goal, Toph observed. The biggest. But I think we're up to it. Sokka looked around at the faces of his friends and allies. Each of you represents a breakthrough in human potential. Toph can manipulate matter at the molecular level. Katara can perform alchemy through waterbending. Kira can interface with mechanical systems through energy manipulation. Suki can predict the future through combat precognition. He paused, meeting each of their eyes in turn. Together, we're not just a group of people with unusual abilities. We're proof that human potential is far greater than anyone has imagined. And if we can demonstrate that here, in Ba Sing Se, we can demonstrate it anywhere. So what's the first step? Mei Lin asked. Sokka's smile was full of possibilities. The first step is to find the others. The people who are waiting for someone to show them what they're capable of. The people who are ready to be part of something bigger than anything that's come before. And where do we find these people? Everywhere, Sokka said. They're hidden in plain sight, waiting for us to recognize them. Servants with unusual intuition, guards with uncanny reflexes, artisans who seem to have a supernatural connection to their materials. His eyes gleamed with anticipation. Some of them might even be wearing Dai Li uniforms. As if summoned by his words, one of the Dai Li agents who had been assigned to monitor them stepped forward. "You can sense something about me," Agent Yuan said quietly. It wasn't a question. "I can sense that your energy signature is unlike any Dai Li agent I've ever encountered," Sokka replied. "I can sense that you're not just following orders, you're genuinely curious about what we're doing. And I can sense that what you're offering is more than just advanced bending techniques. You're offering a way to transcend the limitations that have defined us for generations." Sokka nodded slowly. "Are you interested in learning more?" "I've been waiting my entire life to learn more," Yuan replied. And with that, Sokka realized that his revolution was about to accelerate beyond anything he had previously imagined. Chapter 11, The Fire Nation Infiltration. 3 weeks into their Ba Sing Se operations, Sokka made a decision that surprised even his closest allies. They were going to recruit from the Fire Nation. "Are you insane?" Toph asked when he outlined his plan. "They're literally trying to kill us." "Some of them are," Sokka corrected. "But not all of them. And the ones who aren't, they might be exactly what we need." His target was a young Fire Nation officer named Captain Chen who had been captured during a recent skirmish. Intelligence reports suggested that Chen had been expressing doubts about the war, and Sokka's energy senses confirmed that the man had significant latent abilities. "I want to talk to him," Sokka told Long Feng. "Absolutely not. Fire Nation prisoners are processed through official channels." "Then make this official. I want to conduct an interrogation." "You're not qualified to." "I'm qualified to sense things that your regular interrogators would miss," Sokka interrupted. "Give me 1 hour with him. If I don't learn anything useful, you can process him however you want." Long Feng agreed, mostly out of curiosity about Sokka's methods. Captain Chen was everything Sokka had hoped for and more. Young, idealistic, and deeply troubled by what he had seen of the war's effects on civilian populations. But more importantly, his energy signature practically screamed with untapped potential. "You don't want to be here," Sokka said simply as he entered the interrogation chamber. "Of course I don't want to be here. I'm a prisoner." "No, I mean you don't want to be in this war. You don't believe in what the Fire Nation is doing." Chen's eyes flashed with anger. "You don't know anything about what I believe. I know that your energy signature shows massive internal conflict. I know that every time someone mentions civilian casualties, your life force dims with grief. And I know that you've been having dreams about fire that heals instead of destroys." The last point was a guess, but Chen's reaction confirmed it. "How could you possibly know that?" "Because I can sense the energy patterns that indicate spiritual gifts. And you, Captain Chen, have a connection to fire that goes far deeper than normal firebending." Sokka leaned forward. "What if I told you that there was a way to use fire to create and nurture instead of just destroying? What if I told you that firebending could be used to heal, to energize, to bring life instead of death?" "That's impossible. Fire consumes. That's its nature." "Fire transforms," Sokka corrected. "It breaks down complex structures so that new ones can form. In the right hands, with the right understanding, fire can be the ultimate creative force." He extended his hand, and a small flame appeared above his palm. But this wasn't ordinary fire, it was warm and comforting, pulsing with the same rhythm as a human heartbeat. "This is fire infused with life energy," Sokka explained. "Instead of burning, it nourishes. Instead of destroying, it heals." Chen stared at the flame in amazement. "How is that possible? You're not even a firebender." "I'm an energy bender. I can work with any element because I work with the forces that underlie all elements." Sokka extinguished the flame. "And I can teach you to do the same thing." "Why would you want to teach me anything? I'm your enemy." "Are you? Or are you just someone who was born in the wrong place at the wrong time and taught the wrong lessons about what fire is for?" Chen was quiet for a long moment. "What would you want in return?" "Your help in ending this war. Your knowledge of Fire Nation tactics and technology." And most importantly, your willingness to prove that Fire Nation citizens can work alongside Earth Kingdom and Water Tribe citizens for the common good. And if I refuse? Then you go back to your cell, and eventually you get processed through whatever channels Long Feng has set up for prisoners of war. But if you agree, Sokka's smile was full of possibilities. If you agree, you become part of something that's going to change the world. Chen's decision came faster than Sokka had expected. Show me. Over the next several days, working in secret in a section of their underground facility that even Long Feng didn't know about, Sokka began training Chen in energy-enhanced firebending. The results were extraordinary. I can feel the life force in the flame, Chen said during their third session. It's like the fire is alive. All fire is alive, in a sense. It's a chemical reaction, which means it's a form of energy transformation. What you're learning to do is direct the transformation toward creation instead of destruction. Chen held up his hand, and a small flame danced above his palm. But instead of the harsh orange-red of normal fire, this flame was golden, warm, and somehow comforting to look at. Can this really heal people? He asked. Try it, Sokka suggested, showing Chen a small cut on his arm. Chen carefully brought the golden flame close to the wound. Instead of burning, the fire seemed to merge with Sokka's skin, accelerating the natural healing process. Within moments, the cut had closed completely. Incredible, Chen breathed. I had no idea fire could do that. Most people don't, but you're going to help change that. Sokka looked at the young Fire Nation officer seriously. Chen, what you're learning here isn't just advanced firebending. It's a completely new way of thinking about what the elements are for. What do you mean? I mean that traditional bending has always been about manipulation and control. Earthbenders move rock, waterbenders move water, firebenders create and direct flames. But energy bending is about harmony and cooperation. Instead of forcing the elements to do what you want, you work with their natural tendencies to achieve something better than either of you could accomplish alone. And you think this approach can end the war? I think this approach can make war obsolete, Sokka replied. When people can sense the energy connections between all living things, when they can feel how their actions affect others at the most fundamental level, it becomes much harder to see anyone as an enemy. That evening, Sokka introduced Chen to the rest of the group. The reaction was mixed, to say the least. You brought a Fire Nation soldier into our secret training facility? Suki asked incredulously. I brought a potential ally who happens to have been born in the Fire Nation, Sokka corrected. There's a difference. Is there? How do we know he's not a spy? Because I can sense his energy signature, and it's completely genuine. Chen isn't here to betray us. He's here because he believes in what we're doing. To prove his point, Chen demonstrated his new healing fire technique, using it to treat a minor injury that Lin had sustained during training. The golden flames danced over her wound, accelerating the healing process dramatically. That's incredible, Katara said softly. I've never seen firebending used for healing before. Most people haven't, Chen replied. I didn't even know it was possible until Sokka showed me how to connect with the life energy that flows through fire. So what happens now? Aang asked. Do we have our first Fire Nation ally? We have our first Fire Nation ally, Sokka confirmed. And if everything goes according to plan, he won't be the last. You're planning to recruit more Fire Nation soldiers? Toph asked. I'm planning to recruit anyone with the potential for energy bending, regardless of their nationality or background, Sokka replied. The whole point of what we're doing is to transcend those artificial divisions. And how exactly are we going to find these potential recruits in the Fire Nation? Suki wanted to know. Sokka's smile was mysterious. Leave that to me. I have some ideas about where to look. Chapter 12, The Circus. Sokka's ideas led them to a traveling Fire Nation circus that was performing in the outer ring of Ba Sing Se. More specifically, they led him to 3 particular performers whose energy signatures were unlike anything he had encountered. Those 3 girls, he told Aang as they watched the performance from the audience. The acrobat, the knife thrower, and the fortune teller. They're not just entertainers. What do you mean? Aang asked, following Sokka's gaze to where 3 young women were performing an elaborate routine that combined acrobatics, weapon work, and what appeared to be genuine divination. I mean their energy signatures are off the charts. The acrobat, that's Tai Li, she has a natural ability to manipulate the energy flow in other people's bodies. The knife thrower, Mai, she can sense the optimal trajectory for any projectile before she throws it. And the fortune teller. Sokka paused, studying the third performer intently. The fortune teller can actually see potential futures. Are you serious? Dead serious. These three aren't just putting on a show. They're unconsciously using energy-bending techniques. After the performance, Sokka approached the three performers backstage. They were even more impressive up close. Tai Li's bubbly enthusiasm couldn't hide the precise control she had over her own body's energy systems. Mai's apparent boredom masked a hyper-awareness of her environment that bordered on the supernatural, and the fortune teller who introduced herself as Naia had the most complex temporal energy signature Sokka had ever encountered. "You're not just performers," he said without preamble. "Excuse me." Mai's voice was flat, but Sokka could sense the sudden spike in her alertness. "I said you're not just performers. You're energy benders who don't know you're energy benders." "What's an energy bender?" Tai Li asked, her curiosity immediately engaged. "Someone who can sense and manipulate the fundamental forces that make all other bending possible," Sokka explained. "Tai Li, when you do your acrobatic routines, you're not just moving your body through space. You're manipulating your own energy flow to achieve feats that should be physically impossible." "That's ridiculous. I'm just really flexible and coordinated." "Are you? Or do you sometimes feel like you can sense the energy pathways in other people's bodies? Like you could disrupt those pathways if you wanted to?" Tai Li's eyes widened. "How did you know that?" "Because I can sense energy patterns, and yours is incredibly sophisticated. You have a natural gift for Kai manipulation that goes far beyond anything the Kyoshi warriors could teach." He turned to Mai. "And you don't just throw knives with exceptional accuracy. You can sense the optimal trajectory for any projectile before you release it. You can feel how air currents and gravitational forces will affect the flight path." Mai's expression didn't change, but Sokka could sense her interest despite her attempts to hide it. "So what if I can? So if you can do that with knives, imagine what you could do with other projectiles. Energy projectiles, for instance." Finally, he looked at Naia. "And you don't just predict the future through cold reading and psychology. You actually perceive potential timelines. You can see the probability cascades that flow from different choices." "That's impossible," Naia said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Is it? Or have you been having dreams about events that later come true? Visions of paths not taken, futures that might be?" Naia's composure cracked slightly. "Everyone has strange dreams sometimes. Not everyone dreams about meeting a water tribe boy who can teach them to see the energy patterns that underlie time itself." The three performers stared at him in silence for a moment. Finally, Tai Li spoke up. "Assuming you're right about all this, what do you want from us?" "I want to offer you the chance to understand and develop your abilities. I want to show you what you're really capable of. And I want to invite you to be part of something that's going to change the world." "What kind of something?" Mai asked suspiciously. "We're building a new kind of nation. One where people with energy-bending abilities can train and develop their skills without persecution or exploitation. One where Fire Nation citizens and Earth Kingdom citizens and Water Tribe citizens can work together because they're connected by something deeper than national loyalty." A new nation. Naia's eyes took on a distant look, as if she was seeing potential futures branching out from this moment. "I see. Possibilities. Many possibilities. Some bright, some dark, all depending on choices not yet made." "What do you see when you look at us specifically?" Sokka asked. "I see partnership, growth, transformation." She paused, her expression becoming more focused. "I see you teaching me to navigate the timestreams consciously instead of just glimpsing them in dreams. Is that something you'd like to learn?" "More than anything." Tai Li and Mai exchanged glances, clearly communicating in the way that close friends do without words. "We're interested," Tai Li said finally. "But we'd want to see what you're offering before we commit to anything." "Fair enough," Sokka agreed. "Come with us tonight. Let me show you what energy bending can really do." That evening, in their underground training facility, Sokka gave the three circus performers a demonstration that left them speechless. He showed them Toph's molecular-level earthbending, Katara's alchemical waterbending, Chen's healing fire, and finally his own ability to manipulate pure energy. "This is incredible," Ty Lee breathed as she watched Sokka create patterns of light in the air using nothing but focused energy manipulation. "How many people can do this?" "Right now, maybe 24, counting everyone in this room," Sokka replied. "But the number is growing every day. And with the right training, it could grow much faster." "What would our role be?" Mai asked pragmatically. "Ty Lee, you'd help us understand Kai manipulation and body energy systems. Your natural abilities could revolutionize healing and physical enhancement techniques." "And me," Mai prompted. "You'd work with our tactical teams. Projectile guidance through energy manipulation has military applications, but it also has peaceful ones. Precision construction, resource delivery, emergency rescue operations." He turned to NAIA. "And you would help us see the consequences of our choices before we make them. Temporal awareness could prevent mistakes that might otherwise set back our progress by years." "When would we start?" NAIA asked. "Tomorrow, if you're willing. But I should warn you, once you begin developing these abilities consciously, there's no going back. You'll see the world differently. You'll feel connections to other people that you never knew existed. And you'll become part of something that a lot of people are going to see as threatening." "Threatening how?" Ty Lee wanted to know. "Threatening to the established order. To the idea that people are fundamentally divided by nationality and element. To the belief that power comes from domination rather than cooperation." The three women were quiet for a moment, considering the implications. "I want to do it," Ty Lee said suddenly. "I've always felt like I was different, like I could sense things other people couldn't. If you can help me understand what that means." "Count me in too," Mai added. "I'm tired of throwing knives at targets that don't matter. I want to do something that actually makes a difference." All eyes turned to NAIA. She was staring into the distance again, her energy signature fluctuating in ways that suggested she was actively perceiving multiple timeline branches. "I see a path," she said finally. "A difficult path, with many challenges and setbacks. But also a path that leads to something unprecedented. A world where the divisions that have caused so much suffering become irrelevant." She looked directly at Sokka. "I choose that path." "Excellent," Sokka said with satisfaction. "Welcome to the revolution." Chapter 13, The Underground Network. With his core team now expanded to include Fire Nation allies, Sokka began implementing the next phase of his plan, establishing a network of energy benders throughout the Earth Kingdom and beyond. "We need to think bigger," he told his inner circle during one of their planning sessions. "Boss Sing Se is just the beginning. We need people in every major city, every important installation, every seat of power." "How do we identify potential recruits from a distance?" Suki asked. "We don't have to identify them from a distance. We train scouts who can recognize the signs of energy sensitivity, and we send them out to find people for us." "That's a huge undertaking," Katara pointed out. "We'd need dozens of scouts, safe houses, communication networks." "We'd need all of that eventually anyway," Sokka replied. "If we're serious about building a new nation, we need infrastructure. This just means we start building that infrastructure now instead of later." Over the next several weeks, they established a recruitment and training network that stretched across the Earth Kingdom. Using Long Feng's resources and his growing dependence on their abilities, they created a system of safe houses where potential energy benders could be identified, evaluated, and given basic training. The results exceeded Sokka's most optimistic projections. Energy sensitivity, it turned out, was far more common than anyone had realized. Most people with the gift had simply never learned to recognize or develop it. But with proper instruction, they could often progress from basic awareness to practical application within a matter of weeks. "We've identified 43 potential recruits in Ba Sing Se alone," Agent Yuan reported during one of their briefings. "And our scouts in other cities are reporting similar numbers." 43. Aang's eyes widened. "That's incredible." "It's just the beginning," Sokka said. "According to my calculations, roughly 1 person in 100 has some degree of energy sensitivity. That means there are potentially thousands of people throughout the Earth Kingdom who could develop these abilities." "And beyond the Earth Kingdom?" Toph asked. The same ratio should hold true everywhere. Fire Nation, Water Tribes, Air Temples, everywhere there are people, there are potential energy benders. The implications were staggering. If Sokka was right, they weren't just recruiting a few dozen allies. They were identifying an entirely new category of human potential that existed across all national and cultural boundaries. This changes everything, Katara said quietly. If energy bending exists in every nation, if it's something that transcends traditional divisions, then it becomes the foundation for a truly unified world, Sokka finished. Not unified through conquest or politics, but unified through shared understanding of our fundamental interconnectedness. But their success also brought new challenges. As word of their activities spread, carefully controlled word, but word nonetheless, they began attracting attention from sources beyond Long Feng's control. We've intercepted communications indicating that Fire Nation intelligence is aware of unusual bending activities in Ba Sing Se, Agent Yuan reported during one of their security briefings. They don't know the specifics yet, but they're investigating. What about the White Lotus? Aang asked. They must have heard something by now. The White Lotus is complicated, Sokka replied carefully. They're not exactly allies, but they're not enemies either. They might actually be helpful, if we approach them correctly. How do you know about the White Lotus? Suki asked suspiciously. That's supposed to be a secret organization. I know about a lot of things I probably shouldn't know about, Sokka said vaguely. The important question is whether we're ready to start making contact with other organizations. What other organizations? Mai wanted to know. Well, there's the Order of the White Lotus, as Aang mentioned. There are also various spiritual sects within each nation that might be sympathetic to our goals. And then there are the underground resistance movements. Resistance movements. Not everyone in the Fire Nation supports the war, Mai. There are people working quietly to undermine the war effort from within. People who might be very interested in what we're offering. That proved prophetic when, 3 days later, they were approached by a Fire Nation deserter named Lieutenant Jiro who had been working with an underground resistance cell. We've heard rumors, he said during their first meeting. Rumors about new kinds of bending, about people who can do things that shouldn't be possible. What kind of things? Sokka asked carefully. Healing with fire, turning sand into metal, seeing the future, reading people's intentions through their energy patterns. Sokka exchanged glances with his allies. Their security was better than he had thought if rumors were all that had reached the Fire Nation resistance. Hypothetically, Sokka said, if such abilities existed, what would your people want to do with them? End the war, Jiro replied without hesitation. My people have seen what this conflict is doing to both sides. We want it over, but we want it over in a way that doesn't just create new conflicts. And how would these hypothetical abilities help with that? By proving that Fire Nation citizens and Earth Kingdom citizens aren't fundamentally different. By showing that we all share the same underlying humanity. Jiro leaned forward intensely. If people could actually feel their connection to others, if they could sense the pain they cause when they attack someone, they might be less willing to attack in the first place, Sokka finished. That's an interesting theory. Is it just a theory? Sokka made a decision. No, it's not just a theory. Over the next hour, he gave Jiro a demonstration of energy bending that left the Fire Nation deserter speechless. But more importantly, he used his energy senses to evaluate Jiro's potential, and found it to be considerable. You have the gift, Sokka told him. Strong energy sensitivity, with particular aptitude for emotional resonance. What does that mean? It means you can sense and influence the emotional energy patterns in other people. Not mind control, emotional harmony. You could help people understand each other's feelings, resolve conflicts, find common ground. That sounds incredibly useful for resistance work. It's incredibly useful for peace work, Sokka corrected. Which is what we're really doing here. By the end of the meeting, Lieutenant Jiro had agreed to serve as their liaison with the Fire Nation resistance. More importantly, he had agreed to help them identify and recruit other Fire Nation citizens with energy-bending potential. This is moving faster than I expected, Katara said that evening as they reviewed their expanding network. Good, Sokka replied. The faster we move, the less time our enemies have to organize against us. Do we have enemies? Tai Li asked. I mean, specific enemies who know what we're doing. Not yet, but we will. Sokka's expression was serious. What we're doing threatens the entire basis of the current world order. There are people who benefit from division and conflict, and they're not going to give up their advantages without a fight. So what do we do about that? We make sure we're strong enough to protect what we're building. And we make sure we're offering something so appealing that people choose to join us rather than fight us. And if that doesn't work? Sokka's smile was grim. Then we make sure we're prepared for war. Because if it comes to that, we're going to need every advantage we can get. Chapter 14, The Spirit World Connection. The breakthrough came unexpectedly during one of Naya's temporal perception training sessions. She was practicing extending her awareness further into potential future timelines when suddenly her energy signature spiked to levels that registered on every sensitive person within miles. Something's happening, she said, her voice taking on an otherworldly quality. I can see more than just the physical world. What do you mean? Sokka asked, immediately alert. There's another layer of reality overlapping this one. Beings of pure energy, places that exist outside normal space and time. Her eyes had gone completely white, and when she spoke, it sounded like multiple voices speaking in harmony. The spirit world. I can see into the spirit world. Sokka's heart raced. If Naia had developed the ability to perceive spiritual realms, it opened up possibilities he hadn't even considered. Can you interact with what you're seeing? He asked carefully. I think, yes, there's a spirit here. It's been watching us. Watching us? What kind of spirit? Before Naia could answer, the air in the training chamber began to shimmer. A figure materialized, translucent at first, then becoming more solid. It appeared to be an elderly man in robes that seemed to be made of flowing energy rather than fabric. Greetings, young energy benders, the spirit said, its voice carrying harmonics that seemed to resonate in their bones. I am Wan Shi Tong, he who knows 10,000 things. I have been observing your activities with great interest. Sokka's mind raced through everything he knew about the owl spirit. Wan Shi Tong was ancient, powerful, and notoriously difficult to deal with. But he was also potentially the greatest source of knowledge in any realm. Honored spirit, Sokka said, bowing respectfully. We are surprised by your visit. I'm sure you are. It has been many centuries since humans developed the ability to bridge the gap between physical and spiritual realms without the aid of the avatar. Wan Shi Tong's luminous eyes studied each of them in turn. Your energy manipulation techniques are fascinating. Unprecedented, in fact. You've been watching us for some time. Aang asked. I have been watching since the first moment this young man began teaching others to sense the fundamental forces of existence. The spirit gestured toward Sokka. What you call energy bending is actually a rediscovery of techniques that were once known to the first humans who learned bending from the original masters. The first humans? Katara asked. Before the separation of the four nations, before the rigid categorization of bending into distinct elements, humans understood that all bending was ultimately manipulation of the life force that flows through all things. Wan Shi Tong's form flickered, becoming more translucent. That knowledge was lost over time, replaced by increasingly narrow specializations. So what we're doing isn't actually new? Toph asked. The techniques are new. The underlying principles are as old as bending itself. The spirit turned to Sokka specifically. But your understanding of these principles is remarkably advanced for someone who supposedly learned them through trial and error. That was a dangerous observation. Sokka chose his words carefully. Sometimes understanding comes in unexpected ways. Indeed it does. Sometimes understanding comes from sources that exist outside the normal flow of time and causality. Wan Shi Tong's stare was penetrating. Sometimes it comes from consciousness that have experienced realities beyond this one. Sokka's blood ran cold. The spirit knew. Somehow, Wan Shi Tong had figured out that his knowledge came from sources that shouldn't exist in this world. I'm not sure what you mean, he said carefully. Of course you're not. But your uncertainty doesn't change the reality of what you are. Wan Shi Tong smiled, an expression that was both benevolent and terrifying. You are exactly what this world needs, regardless of how you came to be what you are. The spirit turned to address the group as a whole. I have come to make you an offer. Access to my library. Knowledge that spans 10,000 years of history across multiple realms. Information about energy manipulation techniques that haven't been practiced since the time of the first avatar. In exchange for what? Sokka asked suspiciously. In exchange for a promise. Promise me that you will use this knowledge to preserve and expand understanding rather than to impose your will through force. That's what we're already trying to do, Aang said. I know. Which is why I'm making this offer. Wan Shi Tong's attention returned to Sokka. But I'm particularly interested in your promise, young man. Your unique perspective gives you tremendous potential for both creation and destruction. Sokka met the spirit's gaze directly. I promise to use whatever knowledge you share to build something better than what exists now. To create connections rather than divisions. To elevate human potential rather than exploit it. Good. Then let us begin. What followed was the most intensive learning experience of Sokka's life, both lives, actually. Wan Shi Tong didn't just share information, he opened direct channels of knowledge transfer that allowed Sokka and his allies to absorb centuries of accumulated wisdom in a matter of hours. They learned about energy manipulation techniques that made their current abilities look primitive. Methods for enhancing physical capabilities that went far beyond traditional Kai blocking. Ways to perceive and interact with spiritual entities. Techniques for sensing the emotional and mental states of others across vast distances. But most importantly, they learned about the historical context of what they were doing. Energy bending was abandoned not because it was ineffective, but because it was too effective, Wan Shi Tong explained. When humans could sense their fundamental interconnectedness, when they could feel the pain they caused others as if it were their own pain, large-scale conflicts became nearly impossible. So why was it abandoned? Suki asked. Because those in power realized that empathetic populations are much harder to control than divided ones. Energy bending was systematically suppressed, its knowledge scattered and hidden, its practitioners persecuted. And now we're bringing it back, Sokka said. You are indeed. And those who benefit from the current system of division and conflict will do everything in their power to stop you. Then we'd better be ready for them, Toph said grimly. Yes, you had better be. Which is why I'm going to teach you techniques that haven't been used for 1,000 years. The advanced training that followed transformed not just their abilities, but their understanding of what they were trying to accomplish. They weren't just developing new bending techniques, they were reviving an ancient approach to human potential that could fundamentally change the nature of civilization. This is incredible, Chen said after mastering a technique that allowed him to create fire that could exist in the spirit world as well as the physical world. I feel like I'm connected to something vast and eternal. You are, Wan Shi Tong confirmed. All of you are now consciously connected to the spiritual foundations of existence. This connection will grow stronger with practice, and it will allow you to accomplish things that most humans would consider miraculous. What's our next step? Sokka asked. Your next step is to establish permanent connections between the physical and spiritual realms. Create a network that spans both worlds, so that your movement can never be completely suppressed by physical force alone. How do we do that? The spirit's smile was mysterious. That, young energy bender, is something you're going to have to figure out for yourself. I can provide knowledge and guidance, but the actual work of transformation must be done by those who live in the physical world. As Wan Shi Tong prepared to return to the spirit world, he left them with one final piece of advice. Remember that what you're building is not just a new nation or a new form of bending. You're building a new way of being human. Don't let the urgency of current conflicts distract you from that larger goal. And with that, the spirit faded away, leaving them with knowledge, abilities, and responsibilities far greater than anything they had possessed before. Chapter 15, The Azula Factor. 3 days after Wan Shi Tong's visit, their expanding network intercepted intelligence that changed everything. Princess Azula was coming to Ba Sing Se. This is bad, Agent Yuan reported during their emergency briefing. Azula has been tasked with investigating the unusual bending activities that Fire Nation intelligence has detected. And she's bringing Mai and Tai Li with her. Sokka's heart skipped a beat. The original Mai and Tai Li, not the circus performers who had joined their group, but their actual counterparts from the series timeline. Wait, might said, confused. There are other people with our names. It's complicated, Sokka replied, his mind racing through the implications. Let's just say that parallel development is more common than you might think. But internally, he was dealing with a much larger problem. If Azula was coming to Ba Sing Se with the original Mai and Tai Li, it meant that timeline convergence was occurring. Events from the series were starting to overlap with the changes he had made. What do we know about this Azula? Katara asked. She's dangerous, Sokka said simply. Extremely intelligent, completely ruthless, and one of the most powerful firebenders alive. If she's investigating us specifically, we need to be very careful. How dangerous are we talking about? Toph wanted to know. Dangerous enough that direct confrontation would be a mistake. But, Sokka paused, an idea forming. But she might also be an opportunity. An opportunity for what? Suki asked incredulously. An opportunity to prove that even the most committed enemies can be transformed through energy bending. The looks he received in response ranged from confused to horrified. Sokka, Aang said carefully, are you suggesting that we try to recruit Princess Azula? I'm suggesting that we try to understand her. Azula's psyche is complex. She's been shaped by a system that rewards cruelty and punishes empathy. But underneath all that conditioning, she's still human. She still has the capacity for growth and change. She's a sociopath, Agent Yuan pointed out. She's a damaged person who's never been shown another way to be, Sokka corrected. And if our energy bending techniques can really help people understand their interconnectedness with others. You want to try to heal Princess Azula's mind? Katara asked, her voice a mixture of amazement and alarm. I want to try to give her the opportunity to heal herself. With guidance. The debate that followed was intense. Half the group thought Sokka had lost his mind. The other half thought he might be onto something revolutionary. Think about it, Tai Li said thoughtfully. If we could help someone like Azula develop empathy and emotional connection, it would prove that anyone can change. Or it would prove that some people are too far gone to be helped, might countered. And we'd all be dead in the attempt. Not if we're careful about how we approach it, Sokka insisted. We don't try to capture her or force anything. We just create opportunities for her to see what we're offering. And how exactly do we do that? Toph asked. We let her investigate us. We let her discover what we're doing, but we control how she discovers it. We show her the positive aspects first, the healing, the connection, the sense of purpose that comes from being part of something larger than yourself. That's incredibly risky, Suki pointed out. Everything we're doing is incredibly risky. But if it works, Sokka's eyes gleamed with possibility. If it works, we don't just gain a powerful ally. We prove that our approach can work with anyone, no matter how far they've fallen into darkness. The discussion continued for hours, but eventually Sokka's argument won out. They would allow Azula to investigate them, but they would carefully stage what she found. We'll need to create multiple layers of discovery, Sokka explained as they planned their strategy. Surface activities that look impressive but non-threatening. Deeper activities that demonstrate our true capabilities. And at the core, evidence of the spiritual and emotional transformation that energy bending can provide. What if she just attacks us when she realizes what we're capable of? Chen asked. Then we defend ourselves. But I don't think that's what will happen. Sokka's expression was confident. Azula is many things, but she's not stupid. When she sees what we can offer, she'll be curious. And curiosity is the beginning of change. 2 days later, Princess Azula arrived in Ba Sing Se with a small retinue that included 2 young women who bore striking resemblances to the Mai and Tai Li who had joined Sokka's group. This is so weird, their Tai Li whispered as they observed the arrivals from a distance. She looks exactly like me, but her energy signature is completely different. Different how? Sokka asked, though he suspected he already knew. Sadder. More constrained. Like she's never learned to connect with her own emotions, let alone other people's. That was exactly what Sokka had hoped to hear. If their Tai Li could sense the emotional limitations of her counterpart, it meant there was definitely room for growth and change. What about the other Mai? He asked their Mai. Angry, she replied simply. Really, really angry. But also empty. Like she's never found anything worth caring about. Perfect. Emptiness and anger were problems that energy bending could address. And Azula herself? Sokka asked Naia. The fortune teller's eyes went distant as she extended her temporal perception toward the Fire Nation princess. Complex. Multiple potential futures radiating from every decision point. But, she paused, her expression becoming more focused. There's a path where she becomes something entirely different from what she is now. A path where she becomes a force for healing instead of destruction. Can you see how we reach that path? Not clearly. But I can see that the key is showing her genuine connection with others. She's never experienced that before. Never understood what it feels like to be truly known and accepted by another person. Then that's what we'll give her, Sokka said with determination. We'll show Princess Azula what real human connection looks like. And we'll see if she's ready to experience it for herself. The game of cat and mouse that followed was unlike anything Ba Sing Se had ever seen. Azula's investigation was methodical and brilliant, but Sokka's counterintelligence was equally sophisticated. Every clue she uncovered had been carefully placed. Every discovery led her deeper into understanding what energy bending could accomplish. But the real breakthrough came when Azula encountered one of their healing demonstrations. She had been following a lead about unusual firebending techniques when she stumbled upon Chen working with a group of injured Earth Kingdom soldiers. What she saw challenged everything she thought she knew about fire and its applications. Impossible, she whispered, watching golden flames knit broken bones back together. Fire doesn't heal. Fire destroys. Maybe the fire you know destroys, Chen said quietly, having sensed her presence. But fire is transformation. And transformation can build as easily as it can tear down. Who are you? Azula demanded, stepping out of her hiding place. Someone who used to believe the same things you believe. Someone who learned that there was another way to use the gifts we were born with. What other way? Chen smiled, and for the first time in her life, Azula saw a Fire Nation citizen who looked genuinely happy. Would you like me to show you? Chapter 16, The Princess and the Flame. What followed was the most delicate negotiation of Sokka's life. Teaching Princess Azula about energy bending wasn't just a matter of demonstrating techniques, it required carefully dismantling years of psychological conditioning while building new frameworks for understanding herself and her place in the world. I don't understand what you're trying to accomplish, Azula said during their first formal meeting. She was sitting across from Sokka in a neutral location, her posture perfect and her expression carefully controlled. These techniques you're showing me, they're clearly powerful. Why aren't you using them to conquer territory? To expand your influence? Because conquest and influence aren't the point, Sokka replied. The point is connection, understanding, helping people become the best versions of themselves. That's naive. Is it? Or is the belief that people are fundamentally selfish and competitive the naive position? Azula's eyes narrowed. People are exactly as selfish and competitive as I've observed them to be. Have you observed them under different conditions? Have you seen how people behave when they feel genuinely safe and accepted? Safety and acceptance are illusions. Everyone will betray you eventually if it serves their interests. Sokka leaned forward slightly. Azula, what if I told you that I could help you sense other people's emotions directly? Feel their genuine intentions, their real feelings about you. I'd say you were lying. Then let me prove it. What followed was a carefully controlled demonstration of empathic energy sensing. Sokka extended his awareness toward Azula's emotional state, not intrusively, but gently, like offering his hand for her to take if she chose. I can sense your confusion, he said softly. Your curiosity about what we're offering, mixed with suspicion that it's some kind of trap. I can feel your anger at being in a situation you don't fully control, and underneath that, your fear that if you let your guard down, you'll be hurt in ways you don't know how to handle. Azula's perfect composure cracked slightly. How could you know that? I can sense it because emotions are energy, and energy leaves patterns that can be read by someone with the right training. Sokka kept his voice gentle and non-threatening. But more importantly, I can teach you to sense the same things in others. To know, with absolute certainty, when someone is being genuine with you. And why would you want to teach me that? Because I think you've spent your entire life surrounded by people who were afraid of you, People who told you what they thought you wanted to hear rather than what was true. And I think that's made it impossible for you to trust anyone or anything. Azula was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was smaller than usual. What if I don't want to sense what other people are really feeling about me? Then you don't have to. But if you did want to, if you were ready to know the truth about the people around you. Sokka paused. What if I told you that some of those truths might be better than you expect? Over the next several days, Azula underwent the strangest education of her life. Instead of learning new ways to dominate and control, she was learning to sense and understand. Instead of techniques for inspiring fear, she was discovering methods for building genuine connection. The breakthrough came when she successfully performed her first empathic reading on someone other than Sokka. I can feel happiness, she said in wonder, her hand extended toward Ty Lee, who had volunteered for the demonstration. Genuine happiness. She's actually glad to be here, glad to be learning these techniques. How does that make you feel? Sokka asked carefully. I don't know. No one has ever been genuinely happy to be around me before. Not without being afraid at the same time. And now I can sense that she likes me. Actually likes me, not because she has to, not because she's afraid of what will happen if she doesn't, but because she finds something in me that's worth liking. Azula's voice broke slightly on the last words, and Sokka realized that they had reached a critical moment. Azula, he said gently, what would it mean to you to have people in your life who genuinely cared about you? Not because of your power or your position, but because of who you are as a person. I don't know, she whispered. I've never had that. Would you like to try? The process of integrating Azula into their group was challenging, but not in the ways Sokka had expected. Her technical abilities developed rapidly. Within a week, she was performing energy-enhanced firebending that rivaled anything Chen could do. But the emotional integration was much more difficult. She doesn't trust the connections she's forming, NAIA reported during one of their progress assessments. I can see her constantly questioning whether the relationships are real or whether people are just being nice to her because they're afraid. That's understandable, Sokka replied. It's going to take time for her to believe that genuine affection is possible. What about her original companions? The other Mai and Ty Lee. That was a complicated situation. The original Mai and Ty Lee had been observing from a distance as their princess underwent her transformation. Their reactions were mixed, to say the least. I don't understand what's happening to her, the original Ty Lee said during a private conversation with Sokka. She's different, softer, like she's becoming a completely different person. She's becoming who she always had the potential to be, Sokka replied. The question is, are you interested in exploring your own potential? What do you mean? I mean that you and Mai have energy signatures that are remarkably similar to two people who've already joined our group. People with the same names, the same faces, even many of the same personality traits. But they've developed abilities and connections that have transformed their lives completely. He gestured toward where their versions of Mai and Ty Lee were practicing advanced energy techniques together. They look happy, the original Ty Lee said wistfully. They are happy. They've found purposes that fulfill them, relationships that nourish them, and abilities that let them help others instead of just following orders. And you think we could have the same thing? I know you could. The question is whether you want it. The conversation with the original Mai was more difficult. She was suspicious, angry, and deeply resistant to the idea that change was possible or desirable. You're trying to turn us into different people, she accused. I'm trying to help you become the people you were meant to be before the world taught you to close yourselves off from connection, Sokka replied. But you're right that it would mean becoming different from who you are now. And what if I like who I am now? Do you like feeling empty and angry most of the time? Do you like having no real relationships, no genuine connections with other people? Mai's expression didn't change, but Sokka could sense the emotional turmoil beneath her controlled exterior. At least emptiness is safe, she said finally. Safe from what? Safe from disappointment. Safe from betrayal. Safe from caring about something and then losing it. Mai, Sokka said gently, what if I could show you a way to care about things without being destroyed if you lose them? What if I could teach you to form connections that make you stronger instead of more vulnerable? The breakthrough with both original companions came when they witnessed Azula's first successful healing session. Using techniques she had learned from Chen and adapted with her own innovations, she was able to use fire to accelerate the healing of emotional trauma as well as physical injuries. I can feel the pain leaving, said the patient, a young Earth Kingdom soldier who had been suffering from what would have been called PTSD. It's like the memories are still there, but they don't hurt anymore. Fire transforms, Azula said softly, her golden flames dancing around the soldier's head. Pain can be transformed into understanding. Trauma can be transformed into wisdom. Nothing has to stay broken forever. Watching their princess perform an act of genuine healing, seeing her face lit up with joy at helping someone else, finally convinced Mai and Tai Li that the transformation they were witnessing was real and worthwhile. I want to learn, Tai Li said that evening. I want to learn to help people the way you're helping them. Me too, Mai added quietly.